share screen or?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I don't know what they're going to see.
Oh, let me see.
You disabled it.
Sorry.
Oh, but
Yeah,
can you
go
guys
for
hear
it.
me?
Go for it. Go ahead, John and Christine.
Okay.
You have it? Okay.
There it is. You can see it.
Yep.
Except I'm not at the beginning. Ooh. All right.
Okay. So I guess
Here we are.
I don't know how many know us, but I'm John and Christine. We've been married since 2006.
14 years.
14 years. We have 4 kids. We actually met in a Catholic singles group in 2004. And I think everybody kind of saw that in our group, there was about 5 of us that, we were kind of, there's some kind of connection there. So anyways, 14 years. What else do we want to say?
We got some pictures there. It's just on our wedding day. We got our kids. We were lucky to take a cruise back in February, right before the pandemic. So thanks be to God for that. And then there's my kids being silly on 4th of July and their older sister, Monica.
Nice.
And we heard of the church teaching when we first got married and stuff, but I know Christine was on contraception before we even met for whatever reason. I don't remember. For whatever reason.
It's common.
So, so we did start off, she was on the pill, and then I think it was within a year we were doing NFP. We've tried 2 separate NFP, I guess you could say programs. Methods. The first one didn't really work well with Christine. And we only did that for like, I think 2-3 years. Just because it was too hard for her, and it was complicated. Not complicated, it was a little bit too easy, but every woman's a little bit different in their system, I guess you can say. So.
Yep. So here we are tonight to talk about like Fabian said, the Catholic teaching on contraception and natural family planning. So we're going to talk about all kinds of aspects of that. And like you mentioned, it's kind of an adult topic. There might be some words that youngins might be curious about or use inappropriately, or, it could show up in their Zoom class tomorrow asking their teacher stuff. So if you've got little ones around, you might want to keep them busy or turn the volume down.
And we're not experts by any means. We've been to, I think, 1 or 2 conferences, and we've read some books over the years and stuff like that. And then I don't know how the topic of us wanting to do it, or someone, I think Fabian asked us to do it, I think. And they were like, okay, I mean, we've read some books in the past, so here we are.
Well, you guys are more qualified than I am, bro. So it'll be a good talk. So yeah, as long as it's respectful and everything, it should be good.
Okay.
All right. Shall we begin with prayer?
This is a prayer that we had at the last conference we went to a couple years ago. It was for the 50th anniversary of Humanae Vitae. So we thought we would start off with that. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Amen. Almighty and all-living God, in the beginning you created them, male and female, as a sign of the covenant with your people, a covenant with which you later seal with the most precious blood of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you for the sublime gift that is a life-giving, one-flesh union of husband and wife, and we ask you for the grace always to cherish, revere, and foster it as you intended. The foundational good of human society and an icon of the union between Christ and his church. As we celebrate these 50 years of the encyclical Humanae Vitae's articulation of the Church's timeless teaching, help us to be wise, bold, and charitable messengers of the good news, so that a culture of love, life, and marriage may flourish in our land. Open the minds and the hearts of those
far away from this truth,
heal those harmed by its rejection, and strengthen those who committed to living it out, inspiring others to do the same. By means of this grace, grant us peace with one another and happiness with you now in this life, and to know its perfect fulfillment forever in the life that is to come. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, head and bridegroom of the church, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Our Lady of Guadalupe,
Pray for us.
St. John Paul II,
Pray for us.
St. Paul VI.
Pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
All right. And here
All right, let's get it going. I can't wait.
So this is how we kind of organize the PowerPoint. First, we're going to go into the biblical roots of, I guess you could say, of love, marriage love. And then we'll go into the meaning of the Christian love and how it's always been interpreted up until really the 1930s. Then we'll go into the consequences of contraception. And then we'll hit on the natural family planning, give you guys a little, the different types of methods and the benefits and all that kind of stuff. And then the last one, we have some, resources that we could remember if you want more information on it. Again, this is just a really broad overview of the whole topic. We don't get much into theology of the body, which is St. John Paul II's thing, because that's a whole big study. We've done one of them, and it's like the beginner's guide, and it's like 6 to 8 weeks long. And then he has a longer one for another 12 weeks. So it's kind of like, if you really want theology of the body, that's a whole nother class. This just kind of give you a beginner's guide, I guess you can say.
That's good. I mean, and like I said, depending on how everyone feels and they're ready to go for the next part, the next section, I'll be more than happy for you guys to do that too, a study on theology of the body, because it's needed, right? Not just for young adults or kids. I mean, for married couples, man, it's needed, right?
Yeah,
It is.
and we're happy to hit play on the DVD for that.
It's what we do best. Leave it to the experts. All right, so here we go with our study.
All right.
Yeah, so what was God's first commandment in the Bible?
What is the what?
What is God's first commandment in the Bible?
Love God above all things.
Oh, there's one before that.
You shall not have false idols.
Nope.
Way even before that.
Before
What?
that.
You're in Exodus. We're going all the way back to Genesis 1. The first
Yep.
commandment is to be fruitful and multiply.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in the beginning, in Genesis 1, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. All right. And we don't just see it there in Genesis 1, but be fruitful and multiply appears other times in the Old Testament. We can see it where after the flood, God blessed Noah and his sons in Genesis 9 and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. In Genesis 17 to Abraham, verse 5 and 6, no longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come forth from you. And then in Genesis 35, verse 11, with Jacob, God said to him, your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. So his name was called Israel. And God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and God shall spring from you. Or king shall spring from you. All right.
Wow, it sounds like you guys really read scripture like that, man. That's crazy.
No, not really.
Okay.
We have resources.
We have
I
good
was gonna say,
resources.
Catholics
Well,
read the Bible.
we actually had we wrote down like a rough draft when you first asked us, and we had like a list of Bible verses, and then we're like, oh yeah, what about this? And then we checked actually our books, and we're like, oh, we can add a couple more now, because there's other ones that we don't know. Like I know in Patrick Coffin's book, he has like 2.5 pages of Bible scriptures on either contraception or be fruitful and multiply. So we just kind of took the ones that we remembered and stuff. But anyways, we'll go. So basically, be fruitful and multiply was God's commandment.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times when he's telling us to be fruitful and multiply, it's also part of a covenant with his people. So covenants, as we know, are exchange of persons, not contracts, which are exchange of goods or services. They're actually becoming family in a covenant. Just like marriage is a covenant between two people, it's joining their families as one, not just an agreement between the two. All right. So being fruitful, multiply, so having lots of children and filling the earth. In the Bible, barrenness has been associated with being cursed. So who was barren in the Bible? We know Abraham's wife, Sarai, who became Sarah. Rebecca, Isaac's wife, Jacob's wife, Rachel, Hannah, the mother of Samuel, Manoah's wife, the mother of Samson, and Elizabeth from the New Testament. All were considered barren or cursed until they had prayed, and God listened to their prayers and blessed them with children.
Just the connotation that the Jewish believed that they were cursed, or the women were cursed if they were not barren. As the old Jewish, that's how the connotation was. Anything bad's happening, we're cursed.
Right, and children were a blessing.
Are we allowed to ask questions or interject at any time, or do we just wait for this to be done?
We'll ask for questions a couple times throughout the.
Maybe in between each of the 4 sections or something.
Okay,
Like
I'll make a note.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's also a verse in Genesis on contracepting. It's the story of Onan in chapter 38. He was, his brother was married and the brother passed away. And so in Jewish tradition, a brother would marry the widow, and then they would have offspring who would be of the deceased. So here's verse 9 and 10. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So when he went into his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground, lest he should give offspring to his brother. And what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he slew him also. So he had a punishment for that, for the withdrawal method, and so punishable by death. All right, and then here's some biblical roots from the New Testament on adultery in Matthew 5. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And on divorce, adultery, and children in Mark 10.
It goes through the whole thing. I just kind of picked the children aspect of it.
Okay. Oh yeah, not all the verses are here, but when Jesus saw, he was indignant and said to him, let the children come to me, do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. So he's pro-children. And then in Hebrews, marital love, let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the immoral and adulterous. Marriage union in 1 Corinthians 6. Do you not know that he who joins himself to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two shall become one. But he who is united to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. And divorce in the next chapter. To the married I give charge, not I, but the Lord, that the wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, let her remain single, or else be reconciled to her husband, and that the husband should not divorce his wife. And Romans chapter 7 on divorce. Thus, a married woman is bound by law to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is discharged from the law concerning the husband. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Till death do you part.
So that's what we had for the biblical roots. Stephen, did you have a question? Or anybody else have a question?
Go for it, Stephen. Is he there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I was just chewing my food. So you guys mentioned barren is likened to being cursed. Just to be clear, is this to the Jewish culture, was this a supernatural phenomenon, aka or it was God suppressing a woman if she was cursed, or was this just superstition? Like that's what they think it means.
That's what they believed. I believe anything that was bad that came from the Lord was because they did something wrong. That was
okay. So coming from the Lord, meaning they are barren because of the Lord directly. Like, is God making the woman barren, or do they just believe that she can't have children?
That's what they believed, as
Okay.
far as I understood.
That God wasn't blessing her with children.
God was not blessing her, because we have to remember back then children were considered a gift. So they thought that if I was barren, that means that he's withholding his gift from me because I did something wrong.
Right. And the children were the ones that took care of the parents towards the end. So the more children that you have, and I think scripture says the more arrows you have in your quiver, the more blessed that you are. And so the kids were a form of retirement. So the more kids that you have, the more that you were blessed. So yeah, exactly.
Okay. Just
But there
clearing
could be-
that up.
Yeah, no, for sure. Good.
But there could be other reasons why God is withholding that gift, right? Because I know that some people that keep trying to have babies and they try all these other methods, and then the minute they stop and do it naturally, all of a sudden they have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it could be other reasons, or maybe they're just not ready.
Yeah, we don't know why God withholds. That was, like I said, it was more of a Jewish belief that, it was a withholding because I did something wrong or something like that. So we don't know God's plans. We can't think that we're mighty or understand everything. So, maybe there's an underlying reason why you can't have kids or something else is wrong. We don't know. We don't know.
Might be a cross you have to carry, there's
any kind of burden or disease or anything,
Yeah. There's people who are ready who want kids that can't have kids, so it just works out like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Right. That was my point. That it's not just because you're doing something wrong. It could be just because it's God's plan. That's what.
Yeah,
It might be a cross you have to carry. Yep.
Okay, move on to what has historically been called Christian love. Anybody remember this playground rhyme?
First comes the yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing how simple stuff really is.
Mm-hmm. There's some truth to that for sure.
The kids speak innocence, right? So in Humani Vitae, paragraph 9, there is description of the 4 characteristics of love. The first one is free. The love is above all fully human, a compound of sense and spirit. It is not then merely a question of natural instinct or emotional drive. It is also above all an act of free will, whose trust is such that it is meant not only to survive the joys and sorrows of daily life, but also to grow, so that the husband and wife become in a way one heart and one soul, and together attain their human fulfillment. There's basically the 4 F's. That's how we always remember them. So the first one is free. The second one is full. It is a love which is total or full. That is the very special form of a personal friendship in which husband and wife generously share everything, allowing no unreasonable exceptions and not thinking solely of their own convenience. Whoever really loves his partner loves not only for what he receives, but loves that partner for the partner's own sake, content to be able to enrich the other with the gift of himself.
That's a beautiful one right there, bro. It's pretty much saying, do not use your spouse just for your pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You got to break those down.
Well, full is like, are you giving, basically, we'll get it to us later. It's about self-gift. That's what full is. It's
Okay.
a giving of your entire self to that other person. That's what
Exactly.
it's, but we haven't really, it's in the later slide, but.
Okay. I'll be quiet.
No, that's okay. It's fine. You speak when you want.
All right, for sure.
The third one is faithful. Married love is also faithful and exclusive of all other, and this unto death. This is how husband and wife understood it on the day on which, fully aware of what they were doing, they freely vowed themselves to one another in marriage. Though this fidelity of husband and wife sometimes presents difficulties, no one has the right to assert it that is impossible. It is, on the contrary, always honorable and, I can't say that.
Meritorious.
Yes. The example of countless married couples proves not only that fidelity is in accord with the nature of marriage, but also that it is the source of profound and enduring happiness. And finally, the last F is fruitful, as we saw in all the biblical texts. I can't say that word. Finally, this, I'm taking this straight from Humani Vitae. So finally, this love is, it's supposed to be fruitful. That's what it means. Frusud, frusat, fecund. It is not confined wholly to loving interchange of husband and wife. It also contrives to go beyond this to bring new life into being. Marriage and conjugal love are by their nature ordained toward the procreation and education of children. Children are really the supreme gift of marriage and contribute in the highest degree to their parents' welfare. So this is where we are co-creators with Christ, co-creators with God, is by being fruitful and bringing new life into the world. And then, when we get married, it's the 4 F's, free, fruitful, full, and faithful are all in our marriage vows. Have you come here freely and without reservation to give yourselves to each other in marriage? Will you love and honor each other as man and wife for the rest of your lives? And will you accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of Christ and his church? So the basic question is, are you ready to accept this person and all that may come from your union completely and forever? And as Christine mentioned before, marriage is a covenant. It's an exchange of persons. So it's not a contract where we're just saying, here, I'll give you something, you can give me something, and we're all call it even. We're exchanging persons.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point right there. There's a reason why there is no divorce, right? You can separate for civil reasons, specific reasons, but you can't get a divorce because it's a covenant that you made to one another with God, invoking him.
And you're forever not hooked up. You're forever in union with that person, as St. Paul said in the Bible verse earlier, with the prostitute. When you're the thing, you're united to that person forever now.
Until that person dies.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you're free to marry again.
So what is sex made for? Is it just for pleasure? If so, why is there so much pain associated with your significant other having sex with another person? If it's just for pleasure, who cares? Everyone can be pleased their own way and with anybody they want. Is it just a deep emotional connection? If so, with whom is it wrong to have a sexual relationship with? Friends, siblings, parents, children, and we can go on the line, emotional with pretty much anything. So what distinguishes sexual relationship from all other kinds of human intimacy? The answer is found in the design of our bodies. In a book by Trenholm and Lila Miller. I can't even know if you see it. Anyways, whatever.
There we are.
There you go. It's a good little book on how to prepare kids for today's tough moral issues. And it goes down for, from even little kids. It tells you what the church teaches. And then it goes, okay, how can you explain it to little kids, and how can you explain it to like teenagers and stuff like that? But if you want a book, we have a couple more. We bought a set. We were going to hand them out at Mass before COVID, and just never happened. So, but in the book, he says, in general, the words we speak should be honest and truthful. In general, the words we speak should be honest and truthful, but we can also speak with our bodies to express ideas. Think of a handshake. When we shake someone's hands, we're saying something with our body. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Or, think of a hug and it says, I'm here for you. And it's nice to see you too then. It means something. Or think about someone punching you or shoving you or something. It means, get away from me. I don't want you anywhere near me. There's a message behind that. Even though we're not necessarily speaking words, our bodies are speaking a language of themselves.
Kind of like when you drive by me when you were going down Sandy Nest and you had that one finger waving at me all the time.
Yeah, that one. That means something too.
There's meaning behind that.
It meant something. I don't know if it was nice or not, but it meant something.
So our sexual actions are a kind of body language through which man and women speak to each other. This is where you can go really off on a big tangent and stuff. If you really want to learn more about the Catholic teaching and stuff, is St. John Paul II wrote a book, 11 Responsibility, I think the 60s, 50s or 60s. And then he wrote, and then his biggest work was a Theology of Body, which were a bunch of lectures he gave in the Vatican. I don't remember, 124 or something like that. And they were compressed into a book. But, that's, if you really want to understand the meaning of, the human body and what it means for the persons and stuff through a Catholic lens, that's the place to go. It is kind of deep. And, Christopher West is probably the most well-known person to talk about theology of body. But in it, he wrote, as a person with a body and soul made in the image and likeness of God, we find the meaning of life through finding out what it means to image God and what our bodies have to do with it. This physical union points to and expresses a deep spiritual union. In the same way that a smile is empty if one is not really happy, sexual union is empty without spiritual union. Not only does their physical communion point to an invisible communion between man and women, but it actually shows us that this love, this self-gift, is what we are called to, what we are created for. And then Scott Hahn wrote in his book, Square to God, which is on the sacraments. He put, sex, according to the Catholic faith, should be an oath in action, a complete gift of self, an embrace in which a man and a woman hold nothing back from one another. It is a gift of an entire life, and so it belongs only in a lifelong, exclusive marriage. It is a covenant exchange, an exchange of persons. I am yours, and you are mine. Marriage is what makes sex sacramental and covenantal. The total gift of self rules out the possibility of divorce, adultery, premarital sex, and contraception. So St. Paul, John Paul II often noted that the opposite of love is not actually hatred. The opposite of love is to use someone as a means to your own selfish end. When we feel that somebody has used us or treats us as a thing rather than a person, we feel violated.
That's beautiful.
So, thus, sex outside of marriage and contraception sex is basically a lie in the language of love, according to St. John Paul II. So a lot of times we think of love, you hate me and stuff like that, the opposite. But, when I started, reflecting on this and stuff, it is more of a selfish, because love is supposed to be charity. You're supposed to be looking out for the best interest of for that other person. And when you don't love someone, you're looking out for your own interest. So it's not really hatred. It's more what's the most benefit for me versus for the other person. Another way we can look at what is sex is made for is from a natural law viewpoint. And we didn't get too much into this, but we look at the functions parts of our bodies, our body parts and stuff. They each have a specific purpose of what they're used for. Ears are made to hear. Eyes are meant to see. So what are the reproductive organs for? Did you know that the organs that are there, the reproductive organs are not complete in and of themselves? They don't have any other function besides one. And it only comes in completion is with the opposite sex. And the root gen, probably Greek, I think this is from Catholic, Christopher West, from which we get words from generous, generate, genesis, genetics, gender, and genitals, means to produce or to give birth to. So a person's gender, therefore, is based on the manner in which that person is designed to generate new life. This means gender is not a malleable social construct. Rather, a person's gender is determined by the kind of genitals he or she has. So that's the second part, Christian love. Did anybody have any questions before we move on to contraceptive, the consequences of contraception, which is what Pope Paul VI wrote in paragraph 17 of his Humani Vitae. He said that there was going to be 4 consequences if contraception was permitted. So that's going to be the next section. But I didn't know if anybody had any questions on what the Christian love was, the historical view of what Christian love is about.
You guys have any questions? Slam them right now before he presses forward.
The consequences are going to be, this is kind of like, the consequences is kind of like my favorite part, but
Yeah.
the downfall of society is right coming up. So
For all you that are planning on getting married or want to know what the church teaches about all that, what is love, the difference between marriage and civil marriage or whatever. I mean, this is the time for you to ask it. So go for it. Don't be afraid. If not, we'll press forward.
I have a question. I used to hear the 2 become 1. And I always wondered, is that the 2 become 1 because the 2 create another life? So if there's another person now in existence, the 2 came together and had a child, that's one child. Or does it mean the 2 came together and became a family, like it's a one unit? I'm just curious.
from my understanding, Fabian can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the children is part of 2 become 1. That's you kind of can think of the Trinity where, the love of the Father, the love of the Son creates new life. But you also, you have to remember that us humans are both body and soul. So when we talk about two bodies becoming one, we're talking both bodily and spiritually, where we are moving together in the same direction.
Exactly.
I hope that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And also just to remember that what God joins together, meaning covenant-wise, no man shall separate. So you do become one spiritually. You become married. You become one body. So just a little biblical support right there.
Right. I also likened it to that because sometimes when somebody's having an issue, one of the spouses, they ask the other spouse to pray for them because they have that special connection, that marriage, so their prayers for their spouse are more powerful than anybody else's. And so I also thought that was probably to become one. That's why they asked.
You also can view like when you are really in unison with your spouse, when they hurt, you hurt. It's kind of a weird, twins, I guess you could say, have the same thing. But those spouses and stuff, they're if you're moving in the right in the same direction and you guys are united, then your self-gift of love, your love for the other person you're looking out for the other person at the same time. So when you hurt, they hurt and stuff like that.
Exactly. It's life-giving love. That's how I always understood it. As in, like, if I do something that my wife wants to do, she's going to do something that I want to do. So if I put her first and she puts me first, then we both win. So that's life-giving love, right? You put each other first and not each other second. So just think about it like that, because it really helped me a lot.
Yeah, we I think when we first got married, we did there's a Christian book called The 5 Love Languages.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helped us, because each person has a different love language, and I thought it helped us at least realize, like, when I feel loved, I feel like I get this from my wife and stuff. But that might be something that doesn't interest her, whatever. She might feel, there's basically 5. I think there's time, there's gifts, there's touch, words of affirmation. I always forget one.
I always forget the other one.
There's another one, but for me, I feel love when I'm touched, rubbing the head or whatever, any kind of physical touch is mine. Whereas Christine might be something, words of affirmation. So I need to compliment her. That's when she feels like I'm loving her. So it's really a different mindset to where, if you really are trying to be united, you need to know that other person's how they're feeling loved.
Mm-hmm. That's a great
Otherwise,
point.
you might be thinking you're loving them I might go buy Christine flowers every single day of the year, but her love language is not gift. It means nothing to her. It doesn't show that I love her, because she really wants me to say, I love you, or you look beautiful today, or something like that. So, if you guys go into a common union, that's part of, I think, all this step, I guess you could say. I don't know what. But anyways, so.
It's a good book.
Yeah. We gave it away and we never got it back. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
I'll give it back. Relax.
I don't even think it was you.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
So if no more questions, then we'll go on to, oh man, we have 51 slides.
Section 3.
Section 3. So as I mentioned in Humani Vitae, paragraph 17, I guess I should have done this one. Pope Paul VI was going into say, if contraception was accepted, then we're going to have, he predicted 4 things that would happen. So we're going to get into that next. But first, I thought I would give you a timeline of, in the US, what contraception, how it came about and stuff like that. In 1873, a Comstock Act was outlawed the sale of contraception. And what was interesting is the Comstock, who's the act that's named after, was a Protestant. He was a Calvinist against Catholic teaching, but he's the one who proposed the law and accepted it, and everybody applauded when he did it, because they realized that, I think what I heard on a podcast was that this was, an industrial revolution was starting to take away fathers from their houses and stuff as we got more industrialized, and that the family was going to kind of spread out, and we didn't need an extra impediment, I guess you could say. In the 1910s, Margaret Sanger, who founded the organization Planned Parenthood, came out and was promoting birth control because she was wanting. She said, women should enjoy sex just as much as men do, and also she was a big believer in eugenics, which is, let's get rid of anybody who's weak and keep only the strong. Only the strong should breed, basically. She has some connotation with also the blacks being racist, but there's kind of mixed things about that. But by her eugenics, you kind of can make a case, because who she targeted were usually the minorities. In 1921, she eventually formed the American Birth Control League. And, like I said, was promoting it. 1930 was, I think, the landmark or a switch in history. Before 1930, all Christian religions believed contraception was wrong, that it was a grave evil. It was only the Anglican Church in 1930 that decided that, okay, we're going to allow contraception only for married couples. And then that way they can spread out their children, or to not have any more children if they have too many. But that was the only case that you can accept contraception. It was only in a marriage, only in a marriage. And of course, now all Protestant religions basically are usually for contraception. So we can see, you let a devil in a crack in the door, he opens it wide open. So in 1960, the FDA approved the first birth control pill. And then 1965, Griswold versus Connecticut, birth control was made legal, basically overturning the 1873 Comstock Act. And of course, this is right in the beginning of the sexual revolution. And at this time, a lot of people in the Catholic Church, a lot of theologians predicted that the church was going to change their teaching on it, as like the Anglican and all the Protestant religions did. And Pope Paul VI did a committee, and I think it was, I want to say like 60–70% of the people who were in the committee were okay with contraception being approved as being something, what's the word I want? Okay, acceptable within the Catholic faith, and that there's no grave sin related to it. But in 1968, when he wrote Humanae Vitae, he got a lot of backlash because he did not go along with the crowd. And it brought, a lot of people disagreed with him. You had people dissenting. And it really caused a big it was a landmark writing. And it's probably the most hated document, probably of all time, or one of the most encyclicals. Amazingly, it's also, I think, might be the shortest encyclical. It's only like, I think, 29–30 paragraphs. Yeah, about 31 paragraphs. So, and then 1970, we start seeing no-fault divorce laws come into effect. I think it started in California with actually Ronald Reagan. And what's interesting, I remember a quote saying that one of the things he regrets was the no-fault divorce law that he passed. 1973 was abortion made legal, Roe versus Wade. And you can kind of see the timeline of things is, if your birth control fails, well, we need a backup plan. Well, the backup plan is to kill the baby, because I don't want the baby, because I never really wanted the baby. And I think in Patrick Coffin's The Contraception Deception, when this case was going on, when they were in the law thing, they even admitted that abortion should be legal, because if our abortion pills don't work, we need a backup plan. It was right out there in the open. And of course, the judges at the time couldn't decide if when conception began. Was it when the egg and sperm combined, or was it when it was implanted? Well, nobody knows. Science didn't tell us. So, okay, we'll just go ahead and approve it, decide on it. Of course, now we know that it happens at conception. So.
I have a question regarding that.
Yeah.
I heard that the woman who started the whole thing that wanted to have an abortion never even had the abortion, and actually had a daughter and has grandchildren.
Correct. And now there's rumors that she actually, on her deathbed, she said that she became pro-life. Father Pavone, Priest for Life, he helped her convert and stuff like that. But at the deathbed, I think there was an article saying that she she recanted that. But so I don't know what's true or not.
I-
Yeah, she did have the child. She was basically just used by the pro-abortion side.
They were saying that apart from her suffering from mental illness, that she said and did a lot of things because of money. That's what Father Frank Pavone was saying, that towards the end of her life, a lot of pro-life people weren't really supporting her financially. And so when the pro-life people came around again, they were offering a lot of money for her to say certain things and for her to get this money. So that's according to a few things that we're listening to. So yeah, take everything with a grain of salt because we really don't know.
I was just wondering because I've heard about Roe v. Wade since I can remember, and no one ever mentioned that. I mean, people that are all for Roe v. Wade, they never mentioned that she never went through with it and actually changed her mind about the whole thing.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, it just feels very convenient.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. Yep.
So what did Pope Paul VI say would be the consequences of artificial methods of contraception? Number one, lowering of moral standards, less reverence to women, government control, and tendency of man to wrongly think that they have absolute dominion over their own bodies. So those are the 4 consequences. So let's see if he was accurate in what he predicted. So lowering of moral standards, infidelity. According to marriage.com, 50 to 55% of marriages have a spouse admitting that they are cheating. Cohabitation. According to Human Life International, 60% of those entering in marriage are cohabitating first. They also have the highest divorce rates too, those who cohabitate first. Divorce rates have skyrocketed. 1870s when the Comstock Act was done and contraception was outlawed, which was, like I said, by the Protestants, progressive Protestants, I would like to say too. Divorce rates were around 5%. And then Margaret Sanger, 1920s, 10s and 20s, it was about 10 to 14. And then 1930, it was still, 13 to 17% before contraception was approved for married couples in the Anglican Church. By 1960, when the first birth control pill came about, divorce rates were 26%. And then 1968, Humanae Vitae, the divorce rate was 28%. And then look at the jump. Just 8 years later, it doubled basically, 47 to 52%, and it's been there ever since. And what we're doing as divorce rates is divorce to marriages and stuff like that. More partners. According to the Institute of Family Studies, only 5% of women are virgins when they enter into marriages now. In the 1970s, 64% of women had 0 to 1 partners before marriage. Now it's only 27%. Sexually transmitted diseases have skyrocketed in the last 4 years. Yeah. Okay.
Numbers are there.
That's crazy.
Abortion. According to Life News, there's about 1 million. I've seen between 800 to 900 million baby abortions per year, and it's the data that most people get it from is from the Guttemacher, which is run by Planned Parenthood, and they don't have all the states. A notable exception is California, which probably has one of the highest along with New York, but it's not included in the count. So after Roe versus Wade, abortions doubled. More than 63 million abortions have taken place in the last, just under 50 years. Abortion is number one cause of death by double. Let's see, approximately 18 to 22% of all pregnancies end in abortion. Only 9 countries in the world have a higher rate. DC has the highest abortion rate, 37%. More than 85% of all abortions are performed on unmarried women, according to the CDC. Black women are 3.5 times more likely to have an abortion than white women. And this is where you can kind of see the effects of Planned Parenthood, which is, you know, Margaret Sanger, remember, she's the one who started the organization. Wasn't necessarily racist, but eugenics. But where do they put most of the abortion clinics? In the poor neighborhoods. Near
Right in the hood.
Blacks and Latinos. They have the highest rates.
Right in the neighborhood.
Yep. 51% of women having an abortion report using contraception during the month. So if you have contraception, like I said, and you need a backup plan, there's abortion. That's what the 1973 Roe versus Wade was trying to accomplish, which it did. Now we get to,
John, really quick. Contraception. What are the different forms of contraception? Are you covering that or no?
Yes.
Are you covering that in this slide, or you already did?
No, that's the next section in section 4 with Christine.
Coming.
Oh yeah. All right, cool. Go for it.
Okay,
Before you continue,
number
before you
two.
continue,
Oh, sorry. Question.
could you go to slide 19 really quick? Okay, I'll just take a screenshot and then just to keep it going. Thank you.
Awesome.
You ready?
Feel free to feel free to ask questions, or if you go to participants, I think there's a little button right there that you can raise your hand somewhere right there too. If you don't want to just whatever, however you want to do it, slam it on the chat, turn on your mic, or raise your little hand if you want.
And Fabian will tell us if someone's raising their hand because we don't have it up right now.
Yeah, I got you guys. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the number 2 consequence of a contraception is less reverence to women. Do I need to say more about pornography? Okay.
It's pretty bad.
Industry-wide, it's about $13 to $15 billion, almost $100 billion worldwide. It started getting Playboy, Penthouse. If you notice, each year it got more racy, more scandalous, I should say. You know, Playboy, you know, you have pictures of naked women. Then you get the Penthouse and Hustlers, like people, you're showing people doing it. It all got more. Internet, the interesting fact, you know, this one is, look at the growth rate and number of porn pages. 1998, there was 14 million, and now there's 2.3 billion in 2018. 26 million porn sites. And it would take over 11,000 years to look at all the pornography pages on the web. I don't know if I have that much time. Most of the downloads, Pornhub has equivalent of 6,650 centuries consumed on Pornhub. People look on it. There's 11 porn sites in the top 300 most popular internet sites. 64% of children look at it weekly. And of course, lesbian was the most searched porn term on the world's largest porn site in 2018. Now, do you think that's men or women who are looking at lesbians?
Man, nowadays probably both, bro.
It's probably both, but I would probably, if you look at a population size, you know, with the gay and lesbian, they're only maybe about 5% of the population. So if you go into the lesbians, it's probably going to be the guys. Remember, guys are visual. Guys are physical. Women are emotional. They have a more emotional state. So typically, it's going to be the guys looking at physical type stuff. According to LifeSite, 64 men were not interested in marriage because of pornography. What's interesting, if you go to Japan, they're having a crisis in people getting married, and it's because they have such a strong porn industry that nobody cares to get married. They can just get off on themselves all the time. And they have the virtual stuff, you know. Pornography increases marital infidelity by over 300%, and 56% of divorces involve one party with an excessive interest. 74% of men said that they would have an affair if they weren't caught. And then this is a key thing. This was written almost 8 years ago. Porn today is more hardcore, is more explicit, degrading and dehumanizing, and places an even greater focus on aggressive sexual activity, which is true because, after you start building an insensitivity to porn, if it's just looking at naked pictures, then you have to start going into sexual acts. Then you have, when you don't get your fix on that, you have to go a step further, which is going to be hardcore, more violent type pornography.
Yeah.
That's the way it leads. You know, you have to get your fix. You know, you're popping the alcohol or whatever. You have to get a fix. So you start drinking more, because once you go off, you start, you know, going through withdrawals and stuff. So that's the key thing, is that the more it is, the more hardcore it gets, the more you look at it.
I had seen a study that said that watching pornography, there was like a scan that they did on the brain that is actually more addicting than cocaine, bro.
Yeah.
Than
Matt
cocaine.
Fradd does a lot. Matt Fradd does a lot on the porn.
Yeah, exactly. And there's for anyone who's struggling with porn, there's Covenant Eyes. That's a good resource for you for your
yes,
for all of your electronics and whatnot. You put Covenant Eyes, and it tells you when you log on, or whoever logs on in your family or whatever it is. Well, also, have you used that quote about the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much, but that it shows too little?
No.
That's a solid quote, man. That's a solid quote. I think it was St. John Paul II, right?
Yeah, that sounds like what he would say.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're still in less reverence. No one wants to talk about this, but sex and human trafficking.
Yep.
There's about 11,000 in 2018, but it was a 91% increase from 2015. And over 71% of these cases are sex trafficking, and 78% if you want to include sex and labor. So sex trafficking includes like escort services, pornography, sex and labor is like doing those nice massages, strip clubs and stuff like that. The average age of the victims is 15 to 17. And women are 7 times more likely to experience human trafficking than men. And then I just heard on a Taylor podcast that 90% of sex trafficking comes over from the Mexican border. This one's not talked about, so but it's one that it's going to be becoming more of a focus, which you'll see in a little bit in consequence number 4, but surrogacy. So that's the practice of women carrying a biological child of another couple or individual. So basically, you're renting a womb, basically. And the reason why this is going to become probably more prominent is because now that so-called gay marriage is there, those people usually are going to want to have a family. Well, 2 men or 2 women cannot have kids on their own. They have to have another third party, which means they have to have someone contributing to their wanting of a baby. So that's going to probably become more of a focus. There's a website, Anonymous Are Us, where people are looking for, because they don't know who their parents are. You know, you have sperm donors and stuff like that, where they don't know who their dad is because it's anonymous. And what's sad is that this also goes against the use of people, because if you look at it, they're getting paid. Like I said, room for rent. They get about 12 to 25,000 in salary-free pregnancy.
Wow.
Which is only 50 cents an hour, by the way.
I have a question about the surrogacy and stuff. Under God's eyes, that person that gave birth, doesn't she still hold responsibility for what happens to that child after they leave? Because the child they're the ones that essentially, like you said, rented their womb.
But who is the DNA from, though?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends. There is one where the mom and the dad get the egg and the sperm and they put it in another person, and then there is that situation
where the parents are technically the husband and wife who use the other person to get the baby. So that's technically, but see, the thing is that being that a woman, when they're pregnant, they will have an emotional attachment because the baby's growing inside of them. So it's really, like you said, there's like 3 people involved now. Yeah. Actually, there's more because you have to have someone implanted in you. But So you're talking about 4 people now, but yeah, there is a connection between the surrogate mother, and you will see cases, there is cases where the women don't want to give up the baby once they bring it to term, because there is a connection to it.
And I think they also signed something that says that when they deliver the baby, they're not legally bound to it. Whatever happens to the baby, they're not responsible.
Well, what if they are the mother? What if I know about that whole paid document, but what about those women who not only rent their womb, but they also provide the egg?
Well, they're not renting their womb then, because it's their part of their baby.
Yeah, they're essentially having a child with a stranger.
Well, if it's a homosexual couple that's 2 men, they need an egg from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it could be hers and then one of the men's, and then so she's kind of the mother, but not going to raise it. So as you can see, it's a legal mess. It's a moral mess. It's just.
And who does it affect the most? The children.
The child. Yeah. Who's mom? Where's dad? Who am I?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wonder what their responsibility is in the eyes of God when they've done all that now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's clear as mud. It's just.
Yeah.
Yikes.
To me, it's like, hey, man, that's your kid. You're taking care of it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the number 3 consequence that he said is government control. First one we pick is China one-child policy. They ran it for 40 years, and there's estimated about 330 million babies were aborted in this period. And usually it was the women who were aborted, because the men are what you wanted as to bring, to keep the name and stuff like that. So it's usually the women that were aborted. Now the problem is that there's over 30 million more men than women in China. Well, now this is leading to women becoming sex slaves, because there's not enough women in the country to procreate with. So now they're being used. In our United States, we have Obama's HSA mandate. I can't remember. Obamacare. Forcing contraception and employee health care plans, even if it goes against employers' beliefs. So you can look at the Hobby Lobby and the Little Sisters of the Poor. I think they're both still going on. They keep going back and forth. Sex ed programs. Planned Parenthood has been responsible for the sex ed programs throughout the country. And, they're teaching kids about contraception, masturbation, homosexuality, transgenderism, anal sex, you name it, they have it. But that's being forced on us. Obergefell and Hodges, which redefined the definition of marriage to allow same-sex couples marriage status. The ramifications are now being seen as, remember that when they first said, oh, we just want to get married. We don't want anything else. We'll live and let live. We can do our thing. You can do yours. But now what are you seeing is a lot of lawsuits going against Christian businesses and stuff being sued because they're not accepting of the gay marriage. And then finally, I think this is finally, the last government control. I put this in. It's not necessarily government, but they work with a lot of the governments and UN and stuff. Is a Gates Foundation by Bill Gates and his wife, who's a supposed Catholic, and Open Society Institute, which is George Soros, which you might have heard with Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff. They're not necessarily government, like I said, but they will withhold money for your country and your area if you do not accept their contraception and abortion. What they want to impose, the so-called overpopulation control. That's their main theme. Just a side note is, oh wait, I forgot to do this. Slide 25. Oh, I'll go back. First on this one, government control. I just bring out the fact we're looking at Russia. So what happened in Russia, they had the Bolshevik, which is the Marxism, communism, come in the late 1910s, right around Fatima, the eras of Russia. Before then, they had every woman had an average of 7 kids. But once the government became communistic, now Russia has 1.7 kids per woman. So so basically they went from 7 to 1.7 because of it. Real quick, going back to,
I think the numbers changed. You're on the right
oh
one.
man,
You're making us dizzy. Right there.
which one? This one? Oh, fertility rate. There's like I said, the Open Society is about overpopulation and stuff. Right now, the fertility rate, placement rates, you should have 2.1 kids to just maintain the population. According to the UN, 79 countries make up 40% of the population. They now have fertility rates below the replacement rate. Japan is the worst. It has 1.3, and 70% of the women have no intention of ever getting married. So
Crazy.
In the U.S., 1976, the average woman had about 40% of women had 44 kids. Now it's only down to 14%.
4 or more.
At 4 or more.
Wow.
What's this one? Oh, I heard this on a podcast too. Wait, what is this for? Oh, what's this 10% for? Oh, I didn't go into, but unwed pregnancies. I didn't have a slide. I forgot to do that one. But I was hearing on a podcast about the blacks, African Americans. In 1910, they had a 10%, there was children out of wedlock, only 10%. Today it's 75%.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Damn.
And as late as, and actually in the early 1960s, I heard that Johnson was he saw it because it was starting to get high. It was about 20% around 1960. But I think the war started coming up with the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff. So it got backburned and now it's 75%. So, you talk about fatherlessness, wrong with society, there you have it. Contraception. Oh, wait. Tendency of a man to wrongly think he has absolute domain. Real quick. Homosexuality. My right to use my own sexuality for pleasure only. It's my right, my body. Transgenderism. It's my right to determine my perceived gender as male, female, or whatever else I can dream up. And of course, now we have the Supreme Court decision, including transgenderism in the 1964 Civil Rights Law. And can you guess who's going to lose? Women. No more women's sports because now men can be women.
Yeah.
Euthanasia. My or the government right to determine when my life shall end. And IVF, it's my right to have a child and treat them as basically as property in a sense, no matter what the cost. So those are the tendency to think of absolute domain of him or herself. Contraception, it's just not a Catholic belief either. Martin Luther declared it was worse than incest or adultery. John Calvin, it's more atrocious to destroy a fetus in a room before it comes to light than to, kill a man in his own house or then in a field. Gandhi. Contraception methods are like putting a premium on vice. It makes men and women reckless. As it is, man has sufficiently degraded women for his lust, and contraception, no matter how well-meaning the advocates may be, will still further degrade her. And then T.S. Eliot, he's on. Sigmund Freud was another one. Sexual activity is perverse if it's given up for the aim of reproduction and pursues the attainment of pleasure as an aim independent of itself. And Freud is not a Catholic.
Exactly.
Theodore Roosevelt said that willful sterility is from the standpoint of the nation, the standpoint of the human race, the one sin from which the penalty is national death, race death. And you can also quote John Paul II, so goes the family, so goes the nation, so goes the world. It's all linked together. And then G.K. Chesterton, kind of similar. What is currently called birth control is in fact, of course, a scheme for preventing birth in order to escape control. No control, no birth. Okay. These are the last section.
Any questions on consequences of contraception?
That's pretty straightforward, man. That's insane. When you look at the stats, that's pretty sad.
Yeah, when you review the timeline and see where we've been and where we are now, it
Yeah.
just all rolls back to contraception. Being
It's all the
abused.
hookup culture, all that.
Yep.
Ah, man, that's
Oh.
bad. Yeah.
Oh.
All right, NFP.
Now we're getting into NFP.
So what is the answer to all of this? Hopefully, NFP.
It wasn't the answer to all of it. It was the answer before it.
Oh yeah. What's always been the answer? Natural family planning. So what is it? It's a general name for the methods of family planning that are based on a woman's menstrual cycle. A man is fertile throughout his life, while a woman is fertile for only a few days each cycle during the childbearing years. Some believe that NFP involves using a calendar or predict the fertile time, but that's not what NFP is today. That's your grandma's method. A woman experiences clear, observable signs indicating when she's fertile and when she's infertile. Learning to observe and understand these signs is at the heart of education in NFP. When a couple decides to postpone pregnancy, NFP can be very effective. It can also be very helpful for couples who desire to have a child because it identifies the time of ovulation. It's used by many fertility specialists for this purpose. Thus, a couple can have marital relations at a time when they know that conception is most likely to take place. When couples use contraception, either physical or chemical, they suppress their fertility, asserting that they alone have ultimate control over this power to create new human life. With NFP, spouses respect God's design for life and love. They may choose to refrain from sexual union during the woman's fertile time, doing nothing to destroy the life-giving, or the love-giving or life-giving meaning that is present. This is the difference between choosing to falsify the full marital language of the body and choosing at certain times not to speak that language. NFP does not change the human body in any way or upset its balance with potentially harmful drugs or devices. People of other faiths or of no religious affiliation have also come to accept and use it from a desire to work in harmony with their bodies. They've also found it leads couples to show greater attentiveness to and respect for each other. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of the methods of natural family planning and how they work. The first one we'll talk about is called the Creighton model. What the woman does is that she's going to look for changes in her cervical mucus throughout her not her menstrual cycle, but her monthly cycle. So when using the restroom, first wipe and then take a look, and then go and then wipe again and take a look. And so you're looking at changes throughout the month on how the cervical mucus looks. Sometimes it won't be present, sometimes it'll be there. It might be cloudy, or it might be whitish, or it might be clear. Stringy, ooh, that's fun. So you're looking at it either visually or sometimes with touch to kind of see from day to day throughout your cycle the changes in the mucus. And then that's charted and kept track of throughout your cycle.
Christine?
Yeah.
Christine, and when you're looking for the colors and all of that, do all the colors mean different things, or are they all pretty much the same?
They do. So they're all different depending on where you are in your cycle.
Oh, okay.
It might start out kind of cloudy, then it gets clearer, that kind of thing. So, and once you start charting month after month and cycle after cycle, you'll look for patterns and you'll see that it's pretty consistent. It's the way a body was designed, a woman's body. So.
Okay.
All right. So, so there's some technology, or through NAPRO technology, you can take a look at their website. There's instructors. You can take classes online. I've looked at all these different methods. There's not really anybody close by that I know of that's teaching them in person. And of course, with the pandemic, everything's going online these days anyway. So if you wanted more information, you could check it out and probably take a class online. This is the only one that actually has trained doctors who use this technology for both achieving pregnancy and postponing pregnancy. So if you're having infertility issues, you can see a doctor and they will understand about this charting and help you learn to chart and what to look for and help you achieve pregnancy. a natural way without chemicals and devices and stuff. The next method is symptothermal. This is going to be similar in that you're looking for cervical mucus every day throughout the day. But in the addition to the symptoms, you're also taking your temperature every morning upon waking, and you're charting that as well. And then another option, part of symptothermal, is checking your cervical position and firmness. So there's a way to tell if it's high or low, or if it's soft or firm. It changes throughout your cycle. So you learn to look for the different signs and also keep a chart on that. I've got an example of the chart. I want to click to see how we look here.
This one?
Yes, this is the next one.
This one?
In the middle. Okay, so here is what a chart might look like. It probably looks really bad on the screen, but there's a place to track the temperature every morning, a place to track what you observe on your toilet tissue, and you just check it off every day. And then your instructors would help you learn to read the different signs on when you're most fertile and when you're not. So you'll know when to avoid intercourse and when to go for it, depending on your goals.
Exactly. It's not a form of contraception, right?
Not exactly. We'll talk
Okay.
about why in a few minutes.
All right.
All right.
That's the one we use.
That's the one we
Yeah.
currently use.
We tried the Billings, which she's going to talk to next first, and it just didn't work for her
Okay.
because it, like I said, the mucus thing it's really every woman's different, and if you're only looking at the sensations and stuff, every woman's a little different and stuff, and if you're uneven, some months you might be really dry and some months you might be really juicy or whatever. It kind of
Juicy.
yeah, so it kind of conflicts things.
Easy, man. Easy. All right. All right. Let's keep it PG.
So
I don't know if that's the official term.
that's not the official term, but
you don't chart juiciness, but we call it that anyway.
yeah.
Okay.
The Billings ovulation method is where you take a mental or physical note of vaginal sensations. So are you feeling dry? Is it feeling wet? Does it feel slippery? That kind of thing. And that again is or juicy. And you chart that as well. So these are all about the charts and looking for signs and looking for rhythms and things like that to get to know your body and what's already naturally happening in every woman throughout history. Just learning to look for these signs that are naturally there and put there by God.
Nice.
Then the last one is the Marquette method, and this one is utilizing a clear blue fertility monitor. So it's kind of like a pregnancy test where it's like a pee-pee stick, and it's testing where you are in your cycle and lets you know different hormones if you are more likely to conceive or less likely. So it's helping you achieve pregnancy, and it could be used to help you avoid pregnancy or postpone pregnancy.
Yeah, that's a better word.
Postpone, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Avoid.
it's kind of like,
Postponing.
like we were talking about, unplanned pregnancy. I was like, nothing's unplanned. If you're engaged in the sexual act, it's planned.
Exactly.
So I don't like the yours. What was the other one we used?
Surprise.
Juicy.
No, not juicy. Unplanned. So we like to use instead unexpected,
Unexpected.
Yeah.
because you're engaging in the act. There's a chance that you're going to get pregnant.
Yep.
It might not be the time that you were thinking, but you engage in it. You're willing to accept a child at that point.
Right. And the church says you can space out your children too. So, yeah.
Says you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Says we're allowed to.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, so all of these are non-invasive. They are drug-free, device-free. The only device would be a thermometer, I don't know, and some toilet tissue. That's about all you need. They're effective at both achieving or avoiding or postponing pregnancy, and they're safe to use while you're breastfeeding, approaching menopause, or other stages in life where, things are going on, could be stress-related or illness. You can still use these consistently, and yeah, look for those signs.
There.
Keep your gifts to yourself. Okay, now we'll talk about some of the other contraceptions out there. You're probably
No,
familiar
these are
with
the
some of these.
contraception.
Oh, wait.
These are-
Let me rephrase that. These are contraception. We already talked about natural family planning methods. These are different, and we'll talk about why in a minute, but you've probably heard of many of them. So I've got the different types, their effectiveness rates, and then some risks. So we've heard of the condom, diaphragms, spermicides. These have possible risks of allergic reaction or irritation, and you can see that their effectiveness is 70s, 80s, 90s. Sterilization for her, getting your tubes tied. Effectiveness looks good, but the risks are possibly bleeding or infection. Somebody's making money off you. There's an increase in your rate of needing a hysterectomy. An ectopic pregnancy, which is dangerous for you and the baby. Baby's probably not going to make it. Painful periods, no thank you. Sterilization for him looks effective, but it's increasing your risk of prostate cancer. I've heard if you live long enough, you get prostate cancer. Why would you want to increase the risk sooner? I don't know. Oral contraceptions, again, effectiveness depends on how well you are at taking a pill at the same time every single day. You know, it's given to a lot of young ladies, and, you know, are they good at cleaning their room and taking care of other responsibilities? Not that much. So you give it to young people, they're probably messing up. It's increasing your risk of heart attack, stroke, blood clots in your legs or lungs, which are fatal, migraines, depression. It's a class 1 carcinogen, which means it is cancer causing. And it's also an abortifacient. So if we know that life begins at conception in the fallopian tubes, it could, conception, or that baby, that human, could go down into the uterus and not be able to implant because of the chemical hormones, synthetic hormones that are in there, and so it is lost and it dies. So not good. The implant looks effective, but check out these risks: headaches, change of mood, hypersensitivity of your breast tissue, increased acne, rashes, and weight gain. So who's going to feel sexy and in the mood when you have increased acne, rashes, weight gain, and headaches? Not sure it's worth the risk. The Mirena IUD has also a high rate, but it's going to really give you a risk of ectopic pregnancies, perforation of the uterine wall or cervix, severe infections, including PID and sepsis, also an abortification. I don't think I said that right, but abortification. I don't know how to say that.
Abortifacient.
Okay, abortifacient. So again, you could have a fertilized egg trying to implant, and that device is in the way, and it sloughs it off, and off it goes, and aborts your child. And you don't even know it. So, and then there's the shot, which also is effective, but it's delaying your return of fertility. So when you're ready to have a baby, you've already got the shot in your system. You may have to wait up to 9 months just to get pregnant. It can decrease your bone density, which we all know is an issue with women as they
Same with oral contraceptions. Oral contraception also, there's the delay when you want to get pregnant that you have to get off. It usually takes a year, about 9 months to a year before those effects go off, to where you can actually see your normal cycle when you do go to it. So it really affects it.
Because your oral contraceptions have been telling your body you're pregnant. So it's preparing to have a child, but it's not going to have a child. And so you've got all these weird chemicals going on between the synthetic ones and the pills you're popping, and then you're trying to, your body's creating natural ones. And so it takes a while to flush out all the bad stuff before you can finally get back on a regular cycle and figure out when you are ovulating and not.
This is plan B, all of that stuff that goes under oral contraceptives, right?
Yeah, I didn't even touch on that one, but that one is certainly an abortifacient. That is the whole purpose of it, is the morning after plan B pill.
Make sure it doesn't implant.
Yeah, make sure that you're, it basically makes you have a period right away, so that if there's a egg and sperm united in your body, that it will get flushed out for sure.
And all of these things, right? And all of these things right here, condom, diaphragm, all of those things, these are all not permitted by the church, right? Or what?
That is correct, because these are all devices and chemicals and things that you have to add to your body that, God made us fine. We're fine the way we are. We just need to learn to read those signs, and we can find out for ourselves when we're fertile and infertile, and work with God to.
And we don't, you don't know the ramifications. Like she said, is that a lot of these, especially the oral contraceptions, being that they're messing around with hormones and doing aggressives and stuff, making you feel like you're pregnant, there's known to cause cancer and stuff like that, because there is extra cells growing inside of you because you think you're pregnant when you're not actually giving birth. So
there's no excuses, really.
Yeah. Janet Smith was like, I think breast cancer.
Yeah, there's an aggressive form of breast cancer that's linked to oral contraceptives, because it's telling your body you're pregnant. So your breasts are getting ready to nurse. And so those cells are all excited and ready to go. And then you're introducing a class 1 carcinogen, so you're more likely to get cancer. And those cells are, ready to reproduce and ready to go. And then you've got cancer cells growing rapidly. So.
And these are under no circumstances allowed as a Catholic, right?
No.
Okay, no excuses.
There is.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, wait, sorry.
So about the sterilization for the female, is there like not permission, but it's allowed if the woman has, for example, I have an autoimmune that I could pass a blockage to my child in the womb. And I wasn't aware of that with my other babies. But when I was told, I decided to get my tubes tied. But before I did that, I talked to the priest, and he told me that if I had my children already, and if I had my children already, and I had been diagnosed with this, that could cause the baby to basically die inside the womb, he was giving me the okay to get the procedure done. Is that still okay, or would I have to talk to somebody else about that? Or
Well, John and I are cringing over here because we're like, oh man, that's some bad advice on behalf of the priest. I don't know. I feel like you should just share the teaching, not what they think you want to hear or something like that. Sometimes these are hard teachings, and it's hard to make changes, and getting a scary diagnosis like that is tough. But with NFP, you could still avoid pregnancy or teen pregnancy with really high effectiveness, which we'll get to.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the stuff right now that you guys were talking about, and I was like, darn, I could have just done it this way instead of having that procedure done. But what would I have to do to be able to, I don't know, would I be still able to receive communion for that? If
I would say that, I'm not, this is my suggestion. My suggestion would be to actually confess, being that you didn't know. I wouldn't say it's necessarily more because you were told something that was incorrect. But I would still confess it, and see if you have a good confessor, they would be able to tell you what the next steps would be if there is any.
Let me jump in right there.
Okay.
Honestly, dude, there's a priest, and I actually was talking to John and Aaron about this. His name is Father Tad Polchek. And Polchek. And they have a website called Bioethics. Natural Bio.
NBC Center or something like that?
Yeah, the NBC Center. If you call them, he's a priest. He has master's degrees in all of these things. If you call them and tell them what's going on, and I recommend this to you guys listening, because we're going to do the same thing soon. Call them and tell them exactly what you said. These are priests. They're priests right there, and they'll tell you these are real Orthodox, loyal to the church priests, and they're medical doctors too, man. So they will tell you what to do in these situations. And I'll put the the website on the Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because before a month before I had my baby, I had a C-section. I went to confession and I talked to the priest and I was letting them know what was going on. And that's what he told me. That's what he had recommended to me, that since I already had my children and I was diagnosed with this, that it could potentially cause harm to the child, that I was okay to get the procedure done.
Mm-hmm.
Is what he told me.
Yeah.
They're always gonna go for the easy route, less responsible thing. You know what I mean? Like,
And not
the
to
most
say,
safest thing in their book, but yeah.
And not to say that and I think a lot of priests are not well educated on the church teaching because they want to be, I guess, liked by their things, or they just don't know. A lot of priests would say don't know the teaching, but like Fabian said, Father Paul Check, he's answered those type of questions a lot on the Catholic Answers.
I'll give you the info.
And so he's really good,
Okay.
and he can tell you, you know, what steps you should do next, if any, or what he would recommend.
Mm-hmm.
That center's a good center, I heard.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Like, for example, too, you got to watch out with sometimes what some of the priests say, because I heard sometimes from people, whether it's deacon or priest, that they're like, oh, they said it was okay to use condoms or okay to blah blah blah, and it's like, you really gotta check to see what kind of it's just the time that we live in now. But go for it.
Okay, 12 more. Okay, so there's a myth that there's no difference between NFP and contraception, but we're here to bust that myth. So in reality, NFP methods are different from and better than contraception. NFP methods have no harmful side effects. They're virtually cost-free. So like that one, you just need a thermometer, an extra toilet paper, and a chart. Yeah, paper and pencil. You can use them to both achieve or avoid or postpone pregnancy. The effectiveness rates are right up there with a lot of the other, I keep saying other, with other forms of contraception. Divorce rates. Now this one's interesting. John touched on divorce rates and how we've seen it go from, low teens, 10s to 50% and holding. For those couples who use natural family planning, the percentage of divorce rate is 0.2 to 5%. So that's mind-blowing right there. That these couples stick it out and are able to work together, probably because of some of these other factors. It's requiring mutual communication. We're honoring and safeguarding the unitive and procreative meanings of married love. These are environmentally friendly. We're not flushing extra weird chemical hormones down the toilet, which can affect our environments in all kinds of weird ways. Isn't Mother Earth going through enough right now? We gotta do that. So it cooperates with, rather than suppresses, the couple's natural fertility. It calls for a shared responsibility and cooperation among spouses, fostering respect for and acceptance of the total person. Love me, love my fertility. It encourages maturity and the virtue and a value of children. So fertility is viewed as a gift and a reality to live, not a problem to be solved. Ultimately, NFP respects God's design for married love. Okay. We have a few analogies, because some people get stuck on, aren't they the same thing? There's sex and then no baby. Isn't it kind of the same?
Yeah.
But we've got a few stories for you to help clear that up.
So you can say this. A lot of dissenters.
I don't know.
Okay.
First or
Go
first?
ahead.
Okay. So here's two stories. One on dieting and one on wedding invitations. So imagine there's two women, Mary and Sarah, and both of whom want to lose weight. Mary chooses to eat a healthy diet, limit portions, and occasionally fast, whereas Sarah just throws up her food after eating. Even though they have the same goal or end of losing weight, Sarah's way or means of achieving that goal of self-induced vomiting is disordered and unhealthy. Just as bulimia contradicts the body's design by seeking the pleasure of eating while thwarting its life-giving purpose, contraception contradicts the body's design by seeking the pleasure of sex while willfully thwarting its life-giving purpose. By contrast, Sacrificing sex to avoid a pregnancy, like sacrificing eating to avoid calories, is not thwarting or disordering the nature of the sex act, since there's no act at all. We can teach people the truth that contraception is essentially sexual bulimia. And another helpful analogy is on the wedding invitation. So, and these are from Trent Horn, so you might have heard these on Catholic Answers. Another helpful analogy when used to explain NFP compares the marital act to the act of sending a wedding invitation. When a couple has sex during the fertile period, it's like sending a wedding invitation to a relative who's likely able to attend the wedding. In both cases, there's a good chance that a wonderful person will show up a few months later. When a couple has sex during the infertile period, that's like sending a wedding invitation to a relative who's probably not able to show up or attend the wedding. The person isn't expected to show up, but if he does, he will be welcomed. By contrast, when a couple uses contraception, it's like sending a disinvitation, an announcement that will say, "Don't come to our wedding, you're not wanted here." Using contraception sends the message to your future child, as well as to God, who's responsible for every blessing of pregnancy, saying, "We want sexual pleasure at this specific time when you would be conceived, but you better not show up and ruin it." So the truth is, these children don't ruin sexual pleasure, they're its fulfillment. So it's all about keeping our vows to each other, and there we have it. Oh, just as a good resource, you can look in the Catechism of the Catholic Church pertaining to the 6th commandment, which is "Thou shalt not commit adultery." And it's paragraphs 2331 to 2400. And it outlines pretty well looking at all these different aspects of marital love and consequences and things like that too. It's all in there. So if you have the Catechism, check it out.
Oh, that's pretty much it. These are just, if you want more information on NFP or the church's teaching on human sexuality, here are some writings. Pope Paul, John II, Theology of the Body. There's Humani Vitae, which is a short one. And then Pope Pius XI, Caste Connubii, was actually the first one to write about contraception because it was in response to the Anglican Labyrinth Conference where they allowed it for married couples only. That was paragraph 54, I think he was talking about it. If you want to learn more about contraception, Janet Smith is probably the go-to person. She's a good speaker. Contraception, why not? There's also Why Humani Vitae Was Right. Christopher West is, Theology of the Body. There's books, DVDs, good news about sex and marriage. There's a whole bunch of stuff that he does. Another good book is Patrick Coffin's The Contraception Deception. We got some information from there. And then, of course, the Made This Way, which is easy. This is probably the easiest book to read because it's geared towards talking to your kids. Trent Horn's also good to talk about any kind of pro-life. Stephanie Gray is another good pro-life person who explains it very well. And Father Sebastian Walsh. There's a DVD called Unpredicted, The Untold Story of Sexual Revolution. We have that DVD and we saw it at the Humani Vitae conference and kind of goes into the consequences like we mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint. Some other resources if you want to look on websites and stuff like that. These are the NFP providers that Christine mentioned, the different ways, the different methods of NFP. Oh, that's it, right? We're not doing this stuff.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. So we can, but I feel like we can talk about it.
Yeah. So about, was it 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
During NFP week, we did a slideshow, kind of slides for Facebook and stuff. That was kind of interesting. So we just kind of did fact and myths type of comments and stuff, which we kind of briefly discussed in the presentation already.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome presentation, brother.
So.
Gee, thanks. Oh, there's a card at the end.
Oh. Oh. Well, we can wait and see if anybody has questions, I guess.
Okay. Are there any questions at this point before we close the prayer?
Steven, any questions?
You wanting me to bring this here?
You can bring whatever you
Kinda-
want.
Kind of open it up?
Sure, you could. Yeah, ask away. We could stop at 9 if that's cool.
Oh, wow. All right. 13 minutes? I think this is going to open up to a little longer than 13 minutes, my dude.
Go for it.
So, all right. So I'll begin this with, I consider myself a very strong Catholic. I know John and Christine kind of know me, and Suzanne, and I've always been part of the religious